Great. Good afternoon. Can I get your names?
Yes, my name is Katie Vculek, and I could spell that for you.
Yes, please.
So the last name is V as in Victor, C as in cat, Ulek.
And I'm Brian, her father.
All right. And were both of you in the room this morning when I went through the penalties for perjury, or did you just hear me go through them?
Yes.
All right. And do both of you understand what perjury is?
Yes.
Yes.
And being advised of the potential penalties for perjury, do you promise to tell the truth in this case today?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Thank you. Go ahead.
Excuse me. Judge, can I say something? Brian, have you testified before?
No.
Okay, my mistake.
Yeah, this will be our first testimony. We, like I say, my name is Katie Vculek, and this is my father, Brian Vculek. We have property in Richland and Dickey County that are being crossed by this pipeline. So overall, we're pro-ethanol. I mean, we raise corn. This is a product that we sell, the corn, and we have pipelines on our property. We've had experience operating with pipelines, and that's something that we're not opposed to. So today our commentary comes from a point of our experience working with Summit, as well as concerns in particular to this property, mostly in Dickey County, that the route is planned to cross. So Carbon Summit wants to cross a property. The full legal is provided on the excerpt. It's section 20, just south of Oaks in Dickey County. And so I have, just kind of in the handout, I kind of want to run through just an overview of what that property looks like. So the first one shows in red where Summit Carbon wants to put the pipeline. Figure 2 is an overlaid image that I've done on Google Earth, so it shows you exactly where it is. Figure 3 is all of those white lines are our tile. So that is tile we've installed, and based on estimates, there's 129 lines of tile that are going to be cut as a part of this project. So figure 4 adds a green line. That is also a tile line owned by the Dickey Sargent Irrigation District, owned and operated in our area. So that's also located on that field. And then finally, this parcel is irrigated. So that blue dark line is the outline of the irrigated acres on this parcel. So as you look at this property, I just want to everybody understand how much is going on here. And so that's kind of an overview of that property. So like I say, it's extensively tiled, we irrigate it, and we use it primarily. Our goal for this property is potato production. Potatoes are our cash crop, and it's truly what drives our farm and our operation, and it's the reason we enjoy this parcel. That is our intent, and if we weren't able to raise potatoes on it someday, we wouldn't have as much of a benefit of this property, you know. So I kind of just want to go through a background of our communication with Summit. And our first contact was back in February 3rd of 2022. We received an email. Basically, they told us the project existed and this was kind of their plan. We received our first easement and compensation offer on March of 2022. And then our first probably substantive contact with Summit via email was on June 16th of 2022. We had reviewed the easement and we had some concerns, so we reached out and specifically identified areas in the easement we weren't content with. We did not receive a response. I responded to the same individual who sent me that information. So a while later, I sent it to a second alternative land agent that had been in contact from the Richland County parcel, trying to get contact. Again, no communication was received until about a month and a half later. A right-of-way manager contacted us and did address some of those issues and explained why they existed in the easement. So that contact would have been about August 2nd, 2022. And at that point, after that August initial contact, we've had phone conversations with Summit. We've shared our tile plan with Summit, as well as met with Summit on the property on October of 2022. During that meeting, we met with Summit and we explained the extensiveness of this tile plan. We explained the importance of potato production and irrigation on this parcel and how the tile was specifically impacted. So some of that is kind of what we're going to dive into today. And like I say, when we had that October 22nd, 2022 meeting, all of the nearest recorded easements were 5.5 miles to the east of us and 7.5 miles to the west of our property. So as far as the region, there was nothing, to our knowledge, the best of our knowledge, that was fully recorded and a solid easement obtained by Summit. During that meeting, we requested that Summit move this pipeline from its current projected location. We requested that they move it north, still on our property. We own the whole east half. We requested it stay on the southeast quarter, but to go kind of along that top quarter section line. And the reason we wanted that is because we felt it would impact our tile less, and that was just what we felt was the best option for that property. We didn't directly communicate, and I can't speak for landowners farther to that would be the east of us, but we had heard rumblings that they were also interested in that, and we didn't see, just from our general knowledge of the land, that it would be impacting a whole lot more of their irrigation or things like that than what we thought was currently happening. So that was our proposal. On that same meeting, October, on field, Summit told us that they didn't like to make right-hand 90-degree turns, so that's something that they would have to look into. And now seeing the map, there's plenty of 90-degree turns, and there's even 2 of them about 6 miles from this particular property. So that was, they did tell us that they would look into it and they would get back to us. So that communication we appreciated. At that point, about a week or 2 later, Summit filed their application, which included the map with the Public Service Commission. So at that point, we noticed it was filed and didn't quite understand what that meant in relation to our request to move it. So I reached out to that same land agent, and it was a week or 2 before she got back to me, and I'm going to quote an email here. I didn't bring it with the excerpt, but if you need a copy of it, I can provide that. The email was, we tried to move the route as of right away. We tried to move the route, and as of right now, we have not convinced them to move it. I'm not giving up yet. We are trying to get this done for you. I apologize and was waiting until I had better news. Still working on this change for you and your family. And so at that point, I responded, I thanked her, and I said, okay, we'll wait for further communication. We'll see what happens. And that's the last communication we've had with Summit prior to engaging an attorney who reached out around March of 2023. So that's just a background of kind of our interaction with Summit. And it's troubling for us because they indicate a willingness to collaborate with landowners regarding the pipeline route. Summit's application also states the company has modified in multiple locations for constructability issues, including irrigation systems. So for reasons unexplained to us, we were not included in that option of moving. We're not one of those multiple locations that got moved as a result of irrigation or other constructability issues. So in our experience, the communication with Summit kind of breaks down if the landowner request doesn't directly align with their best interests or whatever is easiest for them at the time. And like I say, the reason behind it was not communicated, and that's probably why we're most concerned. So that's just a background on our communication with Summit. Then I'll dive a little bit into drain tile and how we think the pipeline will specifically impact our system. And then my father does a lot of our drain tile systems, and he's very active in that area. So Brian's going to kind of comment more specific as to why we feel our area is considered a challenging drainage system, or challenging area to do drainage. So Summit has communicated at past hearings that they have safety concerns when installing pipelines deeper than 6 feet. And our tile system on this parcel ranges from 9 feet deep to 3 feet deep. Within the area of the pipeline specifically, we believe it ranges from 7 feet deep to 5 feet deep. So just based on that, where the tile line is itself, if they want a whole foot distance below it, they're already going to be below that 6 foot of what's considered their safety depth for this pipeline. So that's just something we wanted to bring before the commission. And we also, during the Wahpeton hearing, Ellingson specifically stated that they've worked on past repair projects, and they specifically referenced that they've reconnected laterals from 60, the number of laterals in a project they've repaired ranged from 60 laterals to 80 laterals. As you can see from our system, it's 129. We're significantly beyond what Ellingson specifically said at that hearing is something that they've worked with before. So that's just an example of how complicated this system can be. And every single lateral is an opportunity for a misconnection. And because there's so many, that's a risk that we're taking on, and something else we'll have to go after Ellington or Summit for to ensure that everything's connected properly. And when you have a lateral disconnect, they cover it in dirt and you don't see it. The first you notice it is what I will reference in in our handout. It's one of the last pictures. Figure 11 is a picture of what happens when the laterals aren't connected. And so what happens is the water is basically filtrating through the soil. It pulls parts of the soil into the tile line, and then they go into the system, and depending on the slope or the system, it either settles in it or it goes out the outlet. It depends on every system. But those are what a settling looks like after a lateral is not connected properly. So that's just another reason that our Dickey County property is of particular concern, and specifically potato production. If potatoes were raised in that area that settling occurred, if there's too much settling, in general, potatoes raised in low levels or low areas with poor drainage have quality issues with the processor, and they don't store to the same capacity. So if, in the worst case scenario, if all of roughly 7 acres of this easement settled for some reason and had poor drainage, those 7 acres worth of potatoes in our storage bin with the rest of the field cause other rotting issues. If one potato from that area starts to rot, that rot gets on everything else, and it's a compounding issue. So specifically for potato production, drainage is super important for quality as well as storage and overall business for us, our viability of our business. That's super important. One of the last things I want to touch on is that this parcel is irrigated. So the easement area is approximately 7 acres. And so in addition to those 7 acres, if you see on figure 6, the white shaded area is what we believe the irrigator will not be able to cover from point of construction until completed restoration. So not only do we lose our easement area, the area they're doing construction in and where the pipeline will be, during that construction until the restoration process, we lose all those access for the irrigator to those additional acres, which we estimate is 36 acres. So in this parcel, it's extremely sandy, it's highly tiled, it's highly irrigated. That was the point of production on this field. And so that loss of irrigation we definitely cannot raise potatoes on it if we don't have irrigation. There's also some onions in the area. We haven't had them on this field, but you can't raise onions on anything that's not irrigated. And the corn, the corn won't be irrigated, it'll be dry land corn. So that's just an additional thing to consider when you're considering land that is irrigated and impacted by this pipeline. Oh, and in addition, when irrigators run in a circle, a lot of times this is meant to run in a full circle. When there's something that we don't want to hit, specifically this pipeline construction area, we would most likely put in or request bumpers be placed. Bumpers are about $3,000, and basically what that is you put it in the soil and the irrigator stops. So that ensures the safety of everyone. If the irrigator is running longer than you expected, it keeps the irrigator out of the easement area, and it protects the pipeline itself as well. So that's an additional cost that we wouldn't have if this pipeline wasn't coming through. And so cutting the 129 tiles on this quarter section of land creates at a minimum 129 opportunities for this project to negatively impact our operation in the short and long term, and the overall economic success of our family. Summit's unwillingness to take a real effort to work with us as landowners to move the project off of a portion of heavily tiled land makes us question what other facets of this project aren't being given adequate consideration. Approval of the proposed route across such a heavily tiled property when we have proposed better options or we have tried to communicate better options is extremely troubling for us. And finally, I just want to kind of touch on the time and the effort so many landowners have given. It's been mentioned again today, but our family has put in so much time that we did not expect. So I'll kind of let my dad go over a little bit about what it looks like to tile on this property.
Okay, a little bit about more about our operation first. I'm probably fourth generation. I think Katie and Son Cole are fifth on this farm. We grow potatoes for the frozen process market, which means French fry potatoes. We store them all, so that means we have to make them store or we don't get paid. We also grow our own seed, and we'll grow edible beans, some corn, and a few soybeans. As I mature, I found that tiling is my exit strategy. So when we have labor available and money, I will start a tiling project to keep the men busy. And I will usually tile till the money runs out or it's way too cold to expect people to stand out there. So I get about 500 hours per year in the tile plow, which is about equal to a normal farmer would get in his large frame tractor. So you could consider me a full-time tiler from that aspect. I'll probably put another 500 hours a year in surveying and design work of these projects. When we design a tile project, the first thing I do is get the John Deere Gator out, ride the field every 60 feet to make a topography survey, bring that survey into the office, create the tile plan, decide whether it needs lift station. This particular one gravities out to a ditch that goes to the river. I actually did not need a lift station on this project, one of the few that I've designed that doesn't need a lift station. However, now it will need a lift station if we use the system that Ellingsons are proposing. They call it a header. I would just call it a submain. And that's fine. I mean, I think eventually they would probably get it working and everything will eventually work. But you need a little background on the complexity of putting in a lift station. In high water table sand in the Oaks area and northwest Richland County, where high water table sands are very challenging. I was able to listen to a lot of the recording of the Wahpeton presentation concerning tile. That's really what brings me here today. I was troubled by the testimony there. You got a very sugar-coated analysis of tiling and the impact of obstacle like a pipeline creates for a tiling company. Back to my installing this lift station. So when I have to install a lift station in high water table sand, I will get dewatering wells out. I will dewater for a few days, hoping to get the water table low enough to dig this hole, because the bottom of your tank has to be 4 feet below your flow line. Well, you're already in the lowest part of your field, and your flow line is probably 4 foot below the surface at least, usually 4 to 6, so call it 6. Now we're 10 feet deep. 10 feet deep in the wettest part of your field. And you're digging and you're digging and your sides are caving in. It is more than a little bit challenging. Figure 7 shows us installing a main line, flexible 15-inch dual-wall main line in a 4-foot open cut, and the pipe is going 4 foot below that. Figure 8 is illustration of repairing a main line on a different project that we failed. I've had my failures. I've fixed my own. The Ellingson Company has put projects in for us. I've fixed their mistakes too. We are not immune to problems, either of us. But just, you can see by the water there, we de-watered that area, and it's still that kind of a challenge. Unless you're really there fighting the battle, it's hard to imagine how difficult this can be. Figure 9, that is installing a main submain, and at that point we encountered electric wire. So that's an obstacle typical of what you would expect if you had to go to a pipeline. We had to dig with the excavator in front of it, behind it. You'll see the red-handled shovel there. You see the black line at the bottom. That's a power line that we had to avoid. Every time we have to encounter an obstacle, you might as well say it's 3 hours with all the equipment. It's really painful. All right, let me get back to my notes here and see what else I missed. So that's I hope I impressed upon you how difficult tiling can be in high water table sand. From the recorded testimony, I believe the Ellingson representative could not reference a difficult installation system. They are out there, and they are not immune to them either. Okay, so this particular system has 129, as Katie said, 129 places that Summit wants to cross. So figure 12 is an overview of the whole quarter. 129 times have to be repaired. Now, Roger Ellingson's a friend of mine. I have respect for their organization. I suspect they probably will get them repaired. It's not likely it will be the first time. I would assume it will take multiple visits over the years to get these repaired. The blue lines on this page indicate the lines that will need an additional lift. As the tile plan is designed now, I have no lift. So the water gravities to the ditch that takes it to the river. After the pipeline comes through, we'll need to lift it. Yeah. Page 13 is a little bit more a blown up picture of the same area. So all those blue lines will have to have a submain or a header, as the Ellingson people will call it, go to a lift station to lift it up over the Summit pipeline to get hooked back up to my existing system. Not impossible, but since I'm just a backwoods engineer and I don't do this custom, I had this company called Misselhorn Tile and Excavation critique this project, and their analysis is it will cost $74,600 to repair this project, which will be covered, I understand, but that is still plus power, plus a pump, and pump for 99 years. Who's going to pay for that? How do we adjust that? Okay, so now let's say there's landowners out there that don't have tile. 99 years is quite a while. Somebody, the next owner, may come along and decide they want to tile it. So if this property is tiled after the Summit pipeline, it would cost $64,000 more than what it did without the pipeline. Plus, again, the electricity and the power line to get to the pump and replacing the pump. These are numbers coming from an engineer, not me. It's significant. Okay, now I will admit this is an extensively tiled system. Many won't go this far, but we do for the storability of the potatoes. Very important to us. Dr. Tom Schur, also testified in Wahpeton, and I believe he sugarcoated it also. He used the term header, submain I would say, but he did not mention an additional lift station. When we design these systems, we pick a control point, the lowest point, the furthest away from the outlet. You want to be 3 feet deep there. Everything is based on that. And quite often, you cannot get any lower than you have to get. There's no spare elevation in our area. We need it all, so it's challenging, to say the least. Even though we separate the soil, topsoil, subsoil, I don't believe we get the full productivity back for a few years, so that's still a disappointment. I guess that's the most of my presentation. I'll stand for questions.
All right, thank you both. Mr. Bender, any questions?
Yes, Ms. Vculek, just a couple of questions. You mentioned in your testimony, in fact, I think you read from a email, and it was a female land agent, is that correct? What was her name?
Julie D'Amelio was a right-of-way land manager that we've been in contact with. Probably about the first we communicated with her was a little before that October meeting.
Okay, and then you mentioned that, I think it was, I don't know if it was before your last email with Julie or sometime before, but you retained counsel. Do you remember that testimony?
Yeah, I remember, yes.
Who did you hire?
A David Piper out of...
Say it again.
A David Piper out of Fargo.
Okay, thank you. That's all the questions I have.
Mr. Pelham, any questions?
Yeah, just a couple. Did you say that you spoke with Ellingsons about the proposed line through your property?
Yeah, that was probably after initial communication. We did communicate with Ellington as well. They received our tile system, and they have seen it. Yes, we communicated with them.
And I think I know the answer, but just to be clear, has the company actually given you an answer as your proposed reroute, or you're still waiting on an answer? No,
and no, we have not heard back. So, and to be fair, our attorney did reach out to them, but it was over, I don't remember the exact dates. But no, from prior to engaging an attorney who reached out in March, we had not heard back from Summit.
Okay. Thank you. I don't have any other questions.
Mr. Bakke, any questions?
No questions.
Mr. Leibel, any questions?
I do have a few. So, if you could turn to your photograph on Figure 11, which I understand to be, that's how you can tell when a tile has failed. Can you explain that a little bit better for me? I didn't quite understand.
It's really quite simple. That's probably over a main line where you connect the lateral to, and possibly the man in the trench didn't get the fitting in tight enough into the main line, and as the tile plow pulled away, it pulled out, or when the excavator operator put the soil on the pipe, it pulled out.
Okay.
The reason one of the reasons I operate the tile plow is because I want to know the job we're getting done. And I'm there doing the best I can to make sure everything is as right as it possibly can be, and we still have issues. The particular field that Summit is asking to cross, we tiled last summer. I've yet to see a sinkhole on that field. Maybe we did 100%. That's almost unlikely, but it's a possibility.
And the question I have, so I thought you had said earlier that your tiles vary from between 9 feet and 5 feet. Is that right?
Depending on the surface topography, we sometimes have to cut through hills to stay low enough at grade to get to the low spot on the other side of the hill. I maintain a personal minimum of 0.1% grade on the pipe because my experience has been when you have a sinkhole and the sand is getting in, if we have 0.1%, there's enough velocity there to continue to wash the sand out of the pipe to the pump or to the river, wherever sand disappears, and you're able to find the sinkhole and repair it rather than have a plugged pipe.
So can these sinkholes, can they be the depth of your tiles, so 4 to 9 feet?
Unattended, they do go to the depth of the tile.
Were you here earlier today when we heard from Chief Briggs from the Mississippi that talked about where they got a bad rainstorm and it caused a collapse and then a guillotine severing of the pipe?
I took that to mean that he was speaking of a pipeline that ran through a ravine, which would be different than our level ground in southeast North Dakota, but at least this project in particular.
Okay.
If I understood what he was saying correctly.
Okay. And I guess the question that just kind of jumped out at me when I see a picture like this is whether or not putting this type of a pipe underneath or next to tiled, where any bad connection can cause instability, is there additional risk there?
In my opinion, there is additional risk. And also additional risk for installers. I do the one call. I try my best to avoid damaging the utilities, but I have hit a pipe, or not a pipe, I've hit a power line or two over the last 10, 15 years, or the excavator, or you miscommunicate with your operators. Things go wrong. We're human. I anticipate this is a risk, yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Paranis, any questions?
No questions.
Commissioner Chrisman?
Would you tell me the legal description of where this corridor is?
Yeah.
Is it
Page
Here?
1.
Yep, page 1, it's printed at the top of figure 1,
Oh,
right there. About, what, 2 miles south of Oaks?
Probably 4.
4 miles?
Bless you.
What's impacted? On their list.
Okay, I got it now on this map that I've been dealing with. What was your reroute recommendation?
We requested that it move north, still on our property, but so it would be on the quarter line, but a little bit more, it would be placed still in the southeast quarter, but along that quarter line. If that makes sense.
So they need to move up almost the half, because this is crossing on the south side, so you're wanting them to move up.
It would stay in the south half,
Yeah.
but it would be on kind of, we said it could still stay on that south half, but we wanted it closer to that quarter line.
Preferable to moving it would be not at all. That would be our preference. Next to that is, I do not understand how far they can bore. Maybe they can bore all the way under this and not affect us. I don't know that. We've had limited exposure with the land people, so the land agents.
Can I just ask you what over on the very east side of your quarter, but then jumping over into the next quarter of land, and right down in the corner, it looks like some type of a building or home. Do you know what's there?
Two residences are, one is, if you're talking about the southeast quarter of section 20, south of the section line is a residence, and east of the southeast corner is another residence.
And is there one up in section 21 as well?
Across the highway to the east, you mean?
Yes.
Yes.
Nearly a mile north, but we were proposing only a half mile north.
Yeah.
No, I mean, like near where this pipeline is set to go, down in the very, very southwest corner of section 21. Is there something there?
Which one's 21?
Yeah, it's 21 across the highway to the east.
Yes.
So then in the southeast quarter, you look south, there's that triangle, that's a yard. And then kitty corner across from there, is that what you're talking? Those two little square buildings?
Yes.
Those are residences.
Yards.
Okay. Thank you for the very, very good testimony.
Commissioner Haugen-Hoffert?
Yes, I do have some questions. My first one is request. You said you did not submit the email from Summit that said they do not like making 90-degree turns. I would like to receive that.
I didn't get that in email. That's what we were told during the visit in October on site. And then what I got in the email is that they wouldn't allow them to move it and that kind of discussion.
Okay, so that was just a verbal.
Yeah,
And was that from Julie?
There was Julie as well as Jimbo. I believe Jimbo is a construction manager of some kind. And if I'm remembering correctly, I believe he made the comment that they don't enjoy or don't like doing 90-degree angles.
Okay, thank you. You talked about Ellingson's testimony about 60 to 80 degrees lateral, and you guys have many more, and that Ellingson would fix it if that was needed, but I would take it, Brian, you would have good oversight of that.
Well, I would want to be present some of the time at least. I don't appreciate being violated across the project that we have here. I don't like that. But my bigger concern is into the future for the rest of the community that doesn't even know this problem is coming. The next landowner, the next generation that may want to tile in all the added expenses that they don't even know about at this point. That's actually my bigger concern than our own problem here.
Okay, noted. You also talked about the impact of the potatoes, that if they're put into storage, they can impact the other potatoes in the storage.
So as we harvest through this field, if there's a spot that has poor drainage, that even if it's only 30 feet by 36 feet wide, we harvest in 36-foot increments. We go through a 30-foot long spot that's got potatoes that rot. You put that in the bin, mix them all up with everything else. You don't just lose this 7 acres that's impacted by this easement. You lose the whole bin. I mean, this is, what, 40,000 hundredweight, $500,000 worth of potatoes easily you can damage. And it's not, and it doesn't happen all by itself. What really happens is, in a poor market situation, the processors sometimes, at least it feels to us, like they use it as supply control. If they see you have a problem, they let it sit till it's a bigger problem, and it's a bigger problem. If they came and got them the first time you seen the problem, it would go away. But you get used for supply management.
You indicated a $500,000 loss. Is that the minimum, average?
That's not the minimum. If we were to, and we probably will, treat this property as a complete half section, so it'll be mile-long rounds, 400 or 500 hundredweight per acre times 300 acres, 120,000, $1.2 million to $1.5 million exposure here on every potato crop.
Repeat that for me again.
$1.5 million exposure on this half section on every potato crop.
Okay. Katie, you talked about bumpers that would needed to be placed in to direct irrigation not to go somewhere. How many bumpers would be needed, and what's the cost of that?
Two. You'd need one on each side. My better terminology would be I would call it a barricade. The irrigator goes up to it, a switch touches it, shuts the irrigator off, or you can set it so it reverses, so it starts watering back the other way.
What's the cost?
Oh, cost. I think they're $3,000 a piece, and I think we'd need two.
Okay. I think that's all I have. Thank you for your detailed testimony.
Mr. Dawson, any questions?
Yes, Judge. Why do you need another lift after the pipeline goes through? Is that because you're putting in another header where the pipeline is, or?
Yes, it would take another header or a submain. Every time you hook up to, when you hook one pipe to another, I always want to drop there, like 0.3 of a foot drop, every time you hook up. Well, there's not 0.3 to give up. If you're putting another submain in, you've got to accommodate for that drop. And I was not 100% sure of that. I was having a difficulty explaining it to Katie, so that's why we brought the missile horn people in to explain it. I brought them in to explain it to her, and when they studied the project, they confirmed that we would need a lift for this. And I don't think that this is so unique to the area.
No further questions.
All right. Thank you both very much.